Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbi Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim ghayri maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Ameen. Alhamdulillahi maqalibul qulub wal absar wa lahumma thabit qulubana ala siratikal qawmi. وجعلنا لوحدتك متحجهين وصلي على الشافي الحبيب رحمة العالمين ومنر الناجين والمرسل العارفين. Praise be to Allah, the turner of the hearts and sight. O Allah, fix our hearts on the best of you, or your always, and make us face you in our way, and bestow blessings on the beloved intercessor, the mercy of all the worlds, the lighthouse of all survivors, the harbor of all the knowers. Ya mawjudan inda shahadati, ya kafi al-lutfi, ya latif as-suni, ya haliman la ya jilul di hajjati bi rahmatik, ya arhamar rahimin. Subhanaka ala hilmika ba'da ilmik, subhanaka ala afwika ba'da kudratik. O existent one, O thou who are present in all difficulties, O thou who are hidden of hidden kindnesses, of subtle making, O gentle one who does not hasten, fulfill my need with your mercy, O merciful of the mercifuls. Glory be to you on your grace after your knowledge. Glory be to you on your forgiveness after your power. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First, I want to, of course, thank my brother Shaykh Nuruddin for again hosting this gathering. It's unfortunate that I am not there in person, but we've come to the conclusion that a larger number of people are watching on the YouTube and the transmissions than sometimes come, and so for all of those of you who are present, please forgive my absence, and for those of you who are present in another way, please accept my presence. There's an inherent challenge, Bismillah, there's an inherent challenge in speaking about Shamsi Tabrizi and Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi. A challenge that is not new or unique to them. It is a challenge of words and images, the challenge of striving to share a vision and a hope and admonitions, as well as encouragement. A challenge that places us in the center of our own uniqueness, our own life's purpose, our own renovation, our own reconstruction as human beings, striving for meaning. The history is interesting and the relationships compelling. Stories that all people could relate to. Rumi's prediction 800 years ago that his Mathnavi would spread around the globe, and the reflections on love that move the hearts of any lover, as well as the hope that encourages any seeker on the caravan of life, are not enough to warrant such lasting attention and love, such a desire to own the man who uttered the words. But then, therein lies a truth. It is the words, indeed the letters, the phrases, the passion that resonates in the heart and in the lives of diverse people from every walk of life, every religion, almost every region of the world where people can read or hear the words. It is a core of love that resonates, but even more than that, it is the fact that again and again, both these wanderers, teachers, lovers, point to the fact that all is analogical. Everything is connected. To Rumi, what is spoken, written, transmitted originates in Al-Quran. The words of Khuda, Allah, God, and to Shams, a da'i of Ismaili background, yet a constant teacher of truth, it is a mystical reality, the personal experience of truth that compels, that responds to the yearning for meaning, that responds to the imploring of the lover, beloved. To grasp these men and their lives and their work, one has to seek from them the means to approach that truth. One has to see in their relationship a munasaba, the example of what they spoke and wrote and lived, both together and then apart. Mevlana was not a generalist poet, striving to evoke emotion through metaphor or through passion, through shared experience of unrequited love, nor to my mind was he a self-absorbed storyteller, but he was a profound realist, a deeply committed believer, and one who was at times frustrated by the attitude and the ignorance and assumptions and arrogance of people who assumed authority and assumed knowledge. His revolution was not outer and social, but inner and transforming, based on the light of his peer Shams Tabrizi, and truly Shams, the sun that radiated from the source, that type of knowledge and light and insight that can transmit through time and space, that can illuminate hearts and minds, even when the words are poorly translated and the intentions much less than spiritual transformation, as we see among the so-called translators of Rumi and Shams Tabrizi today, and certainly among many of the readers. Nonetheless, it is compelling. Nonetheless, it has some transformative effect, even on the most naive of the readers. Ta'wil is a promise to one who engages in dialogue with their own self. It is a mystery to those who are engaged only in the outer. It is the potential within the heart of a true seeker to be in the flow of revelation, in the presence of the divine, and in the heart of every living entity. But it is a choice, a commitment that requires time and time again a renewal, a sincere cleansing, a repentance. It requires a discipline and a yearning to grasp the relationship between the zahir and the batin, between the how in the way we live our lives more than the what we do. What we do should reflect our innermost potential. Where we are should be in the company of sincere and dedicated seekers. And when we engage must be now, now, now. Striving to live fully in the moment as a sojourner, a salik, attracted to the light like the moth, a jazb, one of jazb. When one speaks about Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi, one would expect the speaker to read a lot of poetry, stories, and matnavi and discourses, and I will do that to some degree later in my dars, but I also leave it to you to discover his writings and his teachings. What is most important about Mevlana, other than that reality of Shams Tabrizi, are two things. One is that Mevlana had a very deep and a very profound and a very strong attachment to what he wrote in the Mathnavi, and of course in his Diwan-i Shams Tabriz, because he knew without any doubt where it came from. Not just simply that it came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it came like the Quran from the heart that is the truth in itself. He, in his own words, affirmed this with extreme humility. He left two great collections of deepest mystical poems. One was the Diwan, and the other was, of course, the Mathnawi. And to truly unlock the meaning of his poetry, you need keys, just as you need to unlock doors with any keys. His writings are probably one of the most profound examples of the tahwil, the inner mystical awareness of the Quran. He understood that what he had written was the Quran coming out of an individual's understanding and enlightenment. There is a big difference between Diwan and the Mathnavi in terms of the mysticism, in terms of the language itself. One professor said about the nature of his poetry, and of course we always have to watch out for professors, don't we? Beautiful things, beautiful images spring infinitely out of the bottom of the deep experience into which ordinary people have no insight. Those images collide and intertwine with each other so that they turn into words with a peculiar rhythmical undulation. It is said that in Persia there are so many genius poets who can express mystical experience in various levels and dimensions in beautiful poetical images, but it is also said that Rumi is an incomparable one and no one can imitate it. When a virtuoso of poetical recitation recites his poems, listeners are always induced into an ecstatic state in which the marvelous worlds of understanding human consciousness become manifest in the deep state of meditation. In his Fihi Ma Fihi, he himself said, words spoken in such a state are no longer his own words. His words come out of somewhere and flow to somewhere. The flow of words has an ineffable rhythm and undulation which is identical with the rhythm and undulation of consciousness of mystics and the state of meditation. And in this manner, poetry and mysticism are fused into one in Rumi. As regards his poems, it's not appropriate to say that he expressed his mystical experience with his poems, but it should be said that his poetical experience is equal to his mystical experience. It's the end of that quote. My friends, in other words, the words themselves are the experience. The words themselves are the intoxicant. The words themselves are the wine that is described in the metaphor of the wine. This is a moment of reality where mystical insight and utterances become one. There is a difference between speaking about something or the history of something and trying to inspire some kind of resonance with that subject and open the doorway of your own experiences. That resonance is what Rumi accomplishes in every line, the way he examines consciousness itself in words. To the point that when you read a story, an appropriate discourse, a story in Fihi Ma Fihi, you know you are reading meaning of the Quran in some other form. Allah said, kun fayakun, be, and it became. And this implies that words existed before creation. How important then are the words that we speak, even the words that we think? What is the mystical transformation that takes place in every sentence? When does the cocoon finally become the butterfly? The mystical inner experience of reality, al-haq, the truth, is transformed through personal reflection and meditation and contemplation and experience with the supremely loved, highly regarded, deeply, profoundly aware and awake teacher, guide. Inside all of these mystical discourses and poems, we find a philosophy not expressed in a philosophical form, but expressed in the form of beautiful images. Those images are creating universes as they are spoken. The philosophical reality becomes apparent only after you turn and examine it, long after one hopefully has resonated with it. The incessant urge to know about something, to contextualize it in some kind of theory or philosophy, is deeply embedded in each human being. What happens with a poem or the discourse of a master? This first the experience comes, and then perhaps a kind of intellectual understanding. And if you try to philosophically contextualize it first, you may never ever get that experience. You've worn out the welcome in a way. What did it take to be so transparent as to allow the truth to come through? What does that mean for us? It means that regardless of what is written, we have to understand the vessel we're traveling in. We can compare the structure of the Matnawi to the Diwan Shams Tabrizi. There are scholars who say that Matnawi is more complicated in its structure because of a special nature of the words and spiritual intoxication, even though the words themselves are not direct expressions of self-reflection. It is self-reflection that comes into the words. That is, it is self-reflection that is the intoxicant, the transformer, the tajalli, the irradiator of Allah. At the same time, what's being described in a kind of linear historical way from a state of what one commentator said was sober consciousness, after the tafakkur and after the self-examination becomes, in its own way, a reconstruction of a spiritual state. Intoxication. Perhaps it's more like if you open a bottle of pure oud oil. Those molecules just travel right across the room so fast. The bottle is on one side, and yet the scent reaches the other side in nanoseconds. That's the fullness of Shams and Mevlana. What we get is a molecule of scent. Here is a person who is not only a reflection of the truth, but he is a person who, when he speaks in images, Mevlana. Everything is not only a metaphor, but it is also that majaz, that tunnel or corridor from one dimension to another. The experiences of other dimensions that don't come into the surface of our life, the subconscious or the unconscious, are filled with other images. It means that his experience of al-haq, the truth, Allah, in some way, is a visual experience. The experience he is transmitting to us, if we're ready to receive it, is just that. We have to talk about it. It's an experience of imagination, of khayal, of no thing, of nothing, of truth. You and me, we're affected by it, but yet it's beyond form. Good poetry always strives to describe something that is almost indescribable, but points to something that is apparently real and recognizable. The images of love as a blossoming flower or a flowing stream or a sunrise. Does it define love, or does it describe love? Has it captured a moment in the poet's heart that is transmitted to the reader in a moment of love? The experiences that one gets from Rumi in the sphere of images, in the context of his images, of his consciousness, are so perfect, so high definition, they come through purely in the word. That comes from the alam al-mathal, the world of the primordial images, the world of the pre-existing reality, the world of mental image. We all know the power of mental images. Our own very clumsy mental images can cause us a lot of suffering and pain and worry, questions, attachments, romance, sense of beauty. The alam al-mithal is a world that is free of the constraints of this material world and its images. The moment that one moves into that state of consciousness after one has attained the nafs mut'amina is a state of tranquility, of sakina. Rumi's works come from this realm, undisturbed by the confusions and the distractions of the physical material world. And yet somehow he uses the images of the physical material world to convey them. I'll share with you later in this dars a few of the many gems that can be found in the writings of Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi, but what inspired this poetry is what we need to focus on. What inspired this fire of love, this clarity of insight. We're also speaking here today of Shams Tabrizi, who was his Shaykh, his guide. We know that he met, that he threw his books in the well. We know that they came out dry. That's just one of the many accounts that tell the story of those relationships. It's been related, it can be read and reread. But what was his path before him? And what was his path after his attraction and journeying with Shams? We have to be concerned with the pathways, because those inevitable pathways are what links everything together. When we go from point A to point B, we have to be concerned not only about getting there, but also how we move from point to point. And when we are at point B, we notice that it leads to point C or D or E, etc. What turned a scholar into a teacher, albeit of a Sufic lineage through his father, into a true mystic, an awakened human being? The answer might be simple: love. Love. But love is not simple, is it? It is a quality of wujud, or the real, the al-haq. It is something concealed and not manifest. It is the hidden treasure that is spoken of in the Kashf revelation that Ibn Arabi reveals to us from his experience. Not a hadith, not even a daif hadith, but it is a Kashf hadith, we call it. Something that comes as a ta'wil to Ibn Arabi from the center of truth. I was a treasure that was not known, so I loved to be known. Hence I created the creatures and I made myself known to them, and thus they came to know me. We've all heard that. We've been very familiar with it. The divine roots, al-usul al-ilahiyya, is what Shams Tabrizi planted in the heart of Jalaluddin Rumi. It is the ineffable focus on the real. That is the divine presence that exudes its fragrance or magnetically attracts the heart of the lover and the beloved. Yet people cannot know wujud on their own. It must make itself available to be known by manifesting itself in creation, in one's heart, in one's self, and through the Quran, the scripture that is revelation. The latter is the key that opens the door to the universes and to oneself. Unless one enters the door of the Quran, one cannot know oneself or grasp the love and the accompaniment of the guide. He who knows himself knows his Lord. We love to have what we cannot have. And what we think we have that is good and fulfilling, we fear we're going to lose. And when we lose it, it is inevitable for things of this world that we lose them, objects of love. We fear we'll never recover it again. Here's the dilemma. Here is a paradox. And here is the dance between the two lovers of truth, Shams Tabrizi and Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi. The search for love becomes attachment to the individual, the person, since love seeks consistency and continuity, yet the reality is that love is moment to moment to moment to moment, and in between, it doesn't exist. It's non-existent. What we are truly attached to, and one finds in this in Shaykh al-Akbar's teaching, is the continuity and the permanence of what we have achieved, and that has no form, only moments of being united. We can approach an understanding of this if we absolutely have to, but looking toward beauty, Jamal and Nur, light, is the only means of understanding. Allah is the light of the heaven and the earth. And in the hadith, Allah is beautiful and He loves beauty. And it is this light and this beauty that is attracting these two hearts. And this light and this beauty that attracts our hearts over the centuries to them. In love, we find gratitude, and in love and its human manifested interface, we find humility. There are certain guidelines for how we must be as human beings. I've spoken countless times on the subject of adab. And I also, many times in these series, have spoken about submission and truth, and what it takes to submit and to find that truth that is present. If we are really on this path, if we really understand the importance of humility and gratitude, then we have a hope. Then we can come nearer and nearer to Allah. I have countless talks on that subject, but it all comes back to one reality of how do we apply it? How do we behave in sohbat? How do we behave with others, with our friends, our families, and strangers? How do we, if we know, deal with those who don't even seek to know? I wish we had time to address every one of those questions. I'll refer you to other talks on YouTube, written. But hold the thought in your mind as you read and you understand this relationship of love. I've said many times, don't break anyone's heart. Try never to harm another human being. As we know, the Prophet ﷺ said, the Muslim is one from whose tongue and hand other Muslims are safe. And let's not define Muslim as someone who just puts their head on the ground 5 times a day. I don't want to get into the harsh realities of the world we live in today, but certainly there are plenty of people who are in Syria and Iraq today and other places in this world, putting their head 5 times on the ground, who I don't even want to say the word Muslim at the same sentence as referring to them. There is an open pathway. Don't be arrogant. Don't look down on people who are less than you, or weaker than you, or different than you. There is an open pathway. How can we understand that one woman weeping over the death of her child in Liberia or Guinea tonight can make the whole world suffer? And we see that it is true. It pulls on the hearts of people, and compassionate public health workers, they get and they run to Liberia or Guinea or Sierra Leone or other countries, putting their lives at risk for strangers. People of a different nationality, a different race, a different religion or belief system. The world responds. And we respond with empathy and love and planning for our own children. We have to understand what it means that the whole world can suffer from one person suffering. Does it remind you of anything in Quran? If anyone slew a person, unless it be for murder or for the spreading mischief in this land, it would be as if he slew the whole people, and if anyone saved a life, it would be as if he saved the life of the whole people. Most of the understanding or misunderstanding in this world comes from our lack of understanding of language, our inability to communicate well. Don't pay attention to the words, you pay attention to the love. Don't focus on the lock, look for the treasure within. Shams Tabrizi said, in love's country, language doesn't have its place. Love is mute. And as you drive into the life of Shams, I encourage you to go back to the series of talks on Salman Farsi, Nasir Khusru, Musa, Khidr, Hassan al-Sabah, in these series that we are drinking from the well of the mystics from. Shams Tabrizi trains Mevlana. He taught him, he trained him, but it was Rumi himself who wrote the poetry of love, who talked about tolerance and love and kindness. Come, come wherever you are, join the caravan, leave you and yourself, leave us and ourselves. Come swiftly, come as quickly as possible. Come nearer, until you and we become extinct. Come so that neither you nor we will exist. Do you hear these words? Neither you or I, we will exist. You can find peace and love, and especially yourself in those statements, in that poetry. Shams Tabriz said, how can one attain the truth while living false lives? How can a sound, a word come from your pen? You would then appeal to those real writings written in life before you, and you attempt to write concerning those who would fill that troublesome journey. Instead of establishing a direct relationship with the truth, you attempt to write as you reduce the truth by your very false word. How can one who attempts to write on my life convey my ocean to his deserts without knowing me? To what extent do those who know Sufism and who do not pay a visit to Konya understand me? How dare those who have conveyed their false dreams, which do not belong to me, use my name? Their writings for my soul, more than the strokes of swords, I am Shams, who came to destroy the established rules, who rejected worldly things. How then can they explain me? And wrongly, why do they place me at the center of their intrigues? Well, historically, we can know who he's talking about. Often the followers of Mevlana who were jealous and fearful of him. But is that all he was really talking about? Certainly not. This is obviously a writing that takes on the character of Shams. It tells us something important. Truth speaks to truth. There is no fanciness. There's no deception. He is the one who made Mevlana who he was, who brought out who he could be. Rumi was a person who was loved by the people of Konya. He was a good teacher. He had a madrasa. He was well respected as a scholar. Then all of a sudden Shams appears and he made him into a madhub. He was no longer just a Muslim scholar, even though he had come from a line of Sufis. Mevlana did not really expect anything. He was 40 years old. In his mind, perhaps he was working toward the end of his life. The door knocked upon and the traveler entered. He was just a passerby who didn't pass by. He stayed. He was a stranger. He had come quite unexpectedly. He had a great light within him. He was intolerant of falseness. Humbleness reigned in his personality. He was not arrogant. Who was this Shams? His identity wasn't clear. He was called Shams, the sun. They met. These two oceans, in a sense, meet. Shams becomes the lover and the beloved, and he is the guide and the teacher. He takes Mevlana's life and he cuts him in half. There was the previous life, a scholar with his family and his students, and then there's this new person. That represents what happens when the opportunity comes for a real student to meet a real teacher, a real guide. Shams is sort of like a shadow. Who is he really? His original name was Muhammad. His father's name was Ali. His homeland was Tabriz. That's all. You don't have to know much more. His presence was transforming. Here's a little more about his life. It's told by another writer, but written in the first person. I am Muhammad, son of Ali, or as they call me throughout history, Shams Tabrizi. My grandfather is an Azari Turk. My father is Ali. My grandfather was from Khorasan. He grew up in Alamut. Do you remember Alamut, my friends? He became a disciple of Hassan Sabah. Who was Hassan Sabah? Due to an economical enmity, my family migrated to Khorasan and settled there. I was born in 1183 and they named me Muhammad. My ancestors accepted Ismailia, a branch of Shia, and accepted Jafari of jurisprudence. Now, where are we? My grandfather is said to be an ill-tempered and sharp-tongued man because of my quarrelsome and outspoken nature during my childhood. My mother likened me to my grandfather, whom I never saw because I could not endure the hypocritical nature of people. I would criticize those people I saw committing wrong. As a result of such characteristics, my father would say, your grandfather put us in trouble by means of his sharp tongue. We had to move here because he could not get along with anyone there. You should at least know how to control your words. This is the man who became the mystical teacher of Mevlana. The only way to grasp the Matnavi truly, and Fihi Mafi, and then his love for Shams and the divine and the Diwani Shams Tabrizi, is to develop an inner understanding of this man. We've come, in a sense, almost full circle. He goes on. My father sent me to a madrasa in order to become well-behaved and to be educated through studying the Holy Quran. At the age of 7, I started memorizing the verses of our holy book. Although my peers could not even utter a simple sentence, the Hoja there came to call me Skylark, since I was skinny and frail. But then I became a falcon and then a turtle dove. But they had no idea what this process was. My classmates could not complete even their initial phase, in classical Arabic classes. Within months, I began reading the whole Quran. The very day I arrived there, my teacher surprisingly said, "You are not normal, O Skylark." That night, my father woke up from the night prayer, tahajjud. I made ablution, wudu, and began praying behind him. And after the salam, he said, "Son, the night prayer is not the one that is performed in congregation. It is preferred after waking up at night. Moreover, you are not of an age to be responsible for it. Yet I am pleased to see you praying." He kissed my cheeks and he went to his bed. I took the Quran from its lectern and I began reciting it. I managed to finish reciting it by the morning. I was very drowsy and almost fell asleep. I was lying on the sofa and the angels were reciting verses in my dreams. I woke up, I closed the holy book, and with an ineffable joy after waking up, I realized that I had memorized some verses. I recited so as not to forget them, and when I opened it up, I saw that it was Surah 114, Al-Shams. As I went on reciting, I came to the 10th verse and felt as if my chest swelled out like a balloon. I fainted, and when I regained consciousness, my fingers were still on the 10th verse. Truly he succeeds that purifies it, and he fails that corrupts it. I was taken by this verse. I could not move. I was enraptured so deeply that I fell in love with this surah. Everyone understands the purification disperses cultivation of the lower self. However, ripening the self means also the stumbling of shaitan. Just as the seed is sown in the soil, the self is purified. Thus it is purified by divine hopes and submits itself to the divine grace and lists. The following morning, I told my parents, "Call me Shams from now on. Your son fell in love with the Surah Al-Shams, and from that day on, my name was Shams." I came to be known as Shams Tabrizi from my birthplace. My teacher of religious things was Ukram al-Din Sajasi. He began calling me Asparada, meaning one who flies. I used to rush to the garden during the boring lessons. He thought I would become Shamsi Parade, the flying Shams who would fly from one place to another. My teachers were Abu Bakr Salaba, Shaykh Kirmani, Rukan al-Din Sajasi. Nevertheless, the style of my lessons was question and answer, rather than being merely teaching. Our circle of learning generally consisted of debates. The only master who would satisfy my soul was Maulana Jalaluddin. A Hoja should not only be a teacher, but also a student. He should not say, "I will speak and you should only listen." You should understand without speaking. You should share the things of your heart. You should not speak as if giving a sermon on a pulpit and impose an encumbrance on the heart. He should sometimes mold the meeting and utter a single word so as to flow, reading, including many volumes of books. A teacher as such should present an ocean in a single drop. He should be a seeker and one who is sought. He should be one who devotes himself to go out of the routine. He should not be reticent. I am Muhammad, son of Ali. Either I came early or you came late for the attainment, he said. Jamshid abandoned the throne for his beloved when he saw in his dreams, but he did not know whether the beloved existed or not. He traveled every inch of Anatolia. I also abandoned my future for Maulana. Words can unveil the secrets of Konya that they dare to write. Whose voice of conscience is it to establish my name or my admirers in their scenario of love? How can these poor people who fear the deeply rooted plane of the tree of love, who carry pens as weak as candlelight, explain me who carries fire of saints and the love that became a tree? Fire, love, tree, water, they're only words for you. You immediately begin to make a story and place these words in it. You never wonder their inner realities. You never wonder their inner sounds of these words, their wing beats, their participation in the harmonious invocation of the universe. You cannot see how they transform you while you are living. You are only interested in stories. You try to force words to penetrate into those awkward stories, but you do not have any life story yourself. You do not know how to console the world. How would you feel who you are without feeling the spirit given to them? Can a man such a word without knowing, speak such a word without knowing love? How can you put it into writing? How can you plant a tree without preparing the soil? Soil is required for a fertile garden. Love is required to hail light above your garden. My friends, this is a man who came all of a sudden into the life of Rumi and split his heart. Shams, the one who ignited the fire of love in the heart of this scholar. I read a long thing written by someone else from another perspective. Why? Because I want to show you that across time and space, between cultures, so strong is this love and so strong the power of the words, is that they engaged us. Did they not engage you to listen to the story? Does it not give a hint of love? Did it not keep you awake? When you're in love, the words "I love you" mean something different than they meant to your brother or your sister when you uttered them to them. They mean something different from when your mother or your father even said, "I love you, I miss you." And the words "I miss you" is filled with a lot more than the one that elicits "I miss you too. Bye, talk to you later." And our children go out the door. "I miss you. I'll miss you. I'll miss you too. Bye." When you're really in love, all you want to hear from your beloved is those same 3 words, "I love you." We know that words are filled with this kind of power, yet those words point to a state not really in existent form. That object of love is the holder of great and sacred secret. And more often than not, over time, the object loses some of its attraction. But love, the impulse, the urge, the himmat, the yearning remains unchanged and ever hopeful, seeking its objective. The intoxicant's power never changes, but the consumer of it does. Rumi speaks words that are filled with that intoxicant, to the point that a Persian or a Turkish speaker, a person who can understand Rumi and who is really open, not just someone who can speak the language, but a real Sufi, can get drunk on the words. That's why we can say that the words that come out of him are not under his control. We can get more if we really surrender, if we really submit, if we really trust, if we really practice, if we really become transparent, if we really surrender to a process. Even in translation, our own experience can resonate with the power of the love, for we are very familiar with that divine imperative. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "They love me and I love them." It's possible to understand, even in translation, that which we cannot understand in the language that it was written, yet those words convey and contain such barakah. It is as if we were created for the moment of love. We can certainly understand what it means to not be in control of one's words in a positive way, as opposed to people who are not in control of their words in a negative way. The words are flowing through us, not from us. He, Mevlana, says, "I'm saddened, but in view of the fact that my words are higher than me and I am subject to them, I'm glad, because whenever words spoken by Allah reach, they give light and have profound effects." So all the words that we use in our day-to-day life, He's indicating to us are related to a divine language, because Allah says, "Kun fayakun," be and it became, because language exists before creation. Everything in language reflects something of the divine. You can make a moral and ethical statement and say, therefore, be careful of what you say, because every word you use originated before creation. That would be one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is this way. When you do not speak the words, they are not in 1,000, they are in one. But when you speak well, one word is 1,000 words. He expresses his view about language's relationship to meaning. He said, speech is like ships on the sea of meaning. It means they never reach what is underneath the surface of the sea. They float on the surface. He says the expression always fails to reach the meaning. Hence, the Prophet said, peace be upon him, whosoever knows Allah, his tongue falters. Speech is like an astrolabe to its reckoning. How much does it know of the sky and the sun? He goes on to say, the letter is the vessel. Therein the meaning is contained like water, but the sea of the meaning is with Allah. You can stop and you can take a cup and dip it in the ocean. Those are the letters, he said. The meaning is with him and the al-Kitab, in the womb of the book. In this world, the bitter sea and the sweet sea are divided. Here we see the two seas again when you find throughout the Quran and Islam. Between them is a barrier which they do not seek to cross. Know that both these flow from the origin, pass on from them, go all the way to the origin, he says. Here he uses the word harf instead of language. He uses the word letters. Letters. It has almost the same meaning as language. It implies language, but the letters are the vessel. Each letter contains something. Anyone who recites Tajweedi Arabic understands Tajweedi Quran, the importance of letters. The water in the vessel is only part of the sea, its meaning. The sea is limitless, it is deep. The eternal divine word is hidden in it. It's endless. If you dip your vessel and you're having something of the divine, of the eternal, what Rumi is trying to tell us is that even the language is not sufficient for expressing the entreaty of the heart or the entirety of the meaning. The truth is over the horizon, always over the horizon. What follows is informational and inshallah supportive of a thesis of seeking that affirms inshallah the yearning of the hearts of a true seeker. More than the desire to just understand the historical context of two great men. I leave it to the sincere seeker to make the effort to find the written texts of these men, to read them with eyes and heart trained to meaningful path of Islam, to study and deepen one's imam, to commit to the truth, to become tolerant, to become a sojourner on the path of tasawwuf. To walk that path, you'll need a single guide, and you will need a deep well of yearning and trust and capacity to love. And after that, after all that, time and more time. And still, it's all in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But as he reveals in a hadith narrated by Abdur, a hadith we're all familiar with, Allah's messenger said that Allah said, he who comes with a good deed, its reward will be 10 like that and even more. And he who comes with vice, his reward will be only 1 like that. Or I can forgive him. He who draws close to me a hand's span, I will draw close to him an arm's length. And whoever draws near to me an arm's length, I will draw near to him a fathom's length. And whoever comes to me walking, I will go to him running. And whoever faces me with sins nearly as great as the earth, I will meet him with forgiveness nearly as great as that, provided he does not worship something with me. So we cannot only wait and hope, but we have to strive and hope. We must learn to hear and to see and to feel and to understand in new dimensions and taste the mystic reality within the obvious, the nectar in the flower, the light in the sun. Patience is not sitting and waiting, it is foreseeing. It is looking at the thorn and seeing the rose, looking at the night and seeing the day. Lovers are patient and know that the moon needs time to become full, said Shamsi Tabrizi. Whatever happens, he says to you, don't fall in despair, even if all the doors are closed. A secret path will be there for you that no one knows. You cannot see it yet, but so many paradises are at the end of this path. Be grateful. It is easy to thank after obtaining what you want. Thank before having what you want. And from the Diwan of Shams Tabrizi, Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi, Rahmatullahi, said, "O friend, we are near you in friendship. Wherever you set foot, we prostrate ourselves like the earth. How is it permissible in the religion of love that we should see your creation and neglect to see you?" That friend brought me up with a great care and attention. He sewed me a garment from skin and veins. The body is like a cloak and my heart is like a mystic. The world is like a monastery and he only is my guide. Seek knowledge which unravels mysteries before your life comes to a close. Give up that non-existence which looks like existence. Seek that existence which looks like non-existence. There is a world outside Islam and disbelief. We are enamored of this atmosphere therein. The mystic lays down the head when he reaches there. There is neither Islam nor disbelief in this place. Whenever I prostrate my head, he is the one to whom I bow. In 6 directions or outside the 6, he is the one I worship. The garden, the roses, the nightingale, the music, the beauteous maiden are a mere excuse, and he alone is the real object. In our discussions of Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi and Shams Tabrizi, it's important to keep in mind the concept of ta'wil I began speaking about earlier. It's clear not only from scholarly works, but from people's personal experiences, including my own, that the conveyance of meaning through Mathnavi and the Fihi Mafihi is deeply personal. Understanding the terminology, the words, and how Rumi uses the words has 2 aspects. If you understand Farsi or Dari or well-translated Turkish, you get much deeper understanding. He wrote in Farsi. He was a Farsi, a Dari speaker. He himself talks about the value in the Mathnavi of what he has written in words. It becomes more important when you understand what I'm going to tell you about Shams Tabrizi. The whole concept of the reality of ta'wil is not something that everyone embraces. It's a very deep mystical understanding. But the writings of Rumi are mystical texts. Well, they're much more than texts. They're painted pictures. They're poetry about the reality of the revelation of Quran. We know that the Quran has many different levels and depths to it. Even if one just takes a dictionary and studies the concepts and the words in the Quran, they're ever opening, ever revealing from a lexicographical point of view, let alone the mystical. Mevlana said about the Mathnavi to those who were his critics, he said, "These bumbling criticisms and rejections have been spoken out of ignorance and negligence. It's due to a lack of awareness of the lofty rank of the Mathnavi. If they were to look at its reality, seeking vision, it is a book which contains all the branches of knowledge from the beginning to the ultimate levels in regard to commentary on Quran. It is a text comprising the secrets. Further, it is said, and it is a treasure for our successors who come after us." The word used here for descendants is aqab. It means the total of those who come after us. In other words, the children of the children of the children of the children. However, in this speech, the intentions is for the fuqara, the dervishes, the levels of Bab, the mystic knowers of Urifa, that have been seekers on the Mathnavi way. Following Maulana's translation into the next world will come after him. He says, in a commentary, he attacks those who read the Quran superficially, and ignore its essential truths. They treat it as a book of old stories, which may be compared to the Shahnama. You are seeing the words of the Quran, of Allah Most High, Khuda, only from this viewpoint of the outer existing stories and metaphors and expressions and words. But you lack the ability to see the meanings and the truth of it. Likewise, you understand this noble Mathnavi, which is a fountain of divine secrets, only from the viewpoint of the outwardly existing verses and the existing metaphors and stories. From this viewpoint, this noble book has been understood by your mind to be what the rest of the world has made into poetic verses. It goes on to say, positive religion depends on faith in the unseen. How many of us have that? This hope and fear are in the veil, separating the seen from the unseen. Do you see that veil? When thou hast rent the veil, Allah is the concealer of faults. He mercifully covers up the sins of His creatures and leaves them in ignorance of their final destiny, so that they may have hope and have faith in the unseen. Just as when the time of the hereafter has occurred, the divine realities will become evident. The truth of religious love will become useless. Thus the religious laws will become useless. Thus the religious laws are only useful up to a point, a time when the soul exits from the body. Make the channel in this island of the Mathnavi. Break through the words and expressions and gain access to the inner meaning. Well, many of us are familiar with this process of seeking inner meanings and teachings and texts. How do you get this mystical understanding? Rumi tells us, he says, the Mathnavi is a store for spiritual poverty. Spiritual poverty, a fakir or a darwish, means absence of self. In Sufism, it's related to the word fakir or Muslim mystic. It refers to the absence of ostentation and pride and self-worship and ego and preoccupation with oneself. What is with you? Who would vanish? What is with Allah? Who will endure? So this book is essentially exploring spiritual poverty, annihilation of the self, a yearning for knowledge. Spiritual poverty and annihilation is absolutely necessary. Anyone who delights in the stories and the anecdotes without perceiving their real significance resembles a worshiper of false gods. Nevertheless, through these means, that person can be led to the truth. Even the worshiper of the false idol, through the stories, can be led to the truth. There's hope for everyone, even the person who is worshiping for the wrong reason. Truly spiritual texts are much more than texts. The words evoke certain emotions and empathy. In the writing of Mevlana, they reflect that which we understand is the transmission of the mukashafa, the gaze of the Shaykh at the right moment upon the student, and one who lifts that student station upon station upon station. That capacity for spiritual upliftment has been embedded, if you will, impregnated in the Mathnavi. Like the Quran, it is a living text. It comes directly from Quran. In a reading of the writings of Rumi, it's important to understand what this man did. He was never general in his discussions. He was very specific. He spoke with specific individuals about specific situations. He spoke about particular beliefs, particular misunderstandings, and the complexity of people around him. In that sense, he was the qut of a time and place, like a mujaddid. He was an individual who represented perfectly the situation of how you apply your spiritual knowledge, the Quran and its teachings, to the very specific situations of the day and age. In addition to that, he said that it would last for generations and be a guideline for future generations to come. So his words are still teaching today. He said, if a traveler tripped over a rock and a path 700 years ago, and from that event altered the course of their life, we might conclude that the rock was only incidental. But if that same rock trips thousands of people through the centuries, each walking away with a different message and a different lesson, but profoundly affects their lives, then can we call the rock incidental? When foolish people trip, they get up and they walk away as if nothing happened. They learn nothing. A wise person will find greater meaning in their fall. A rock that trips up travelers in every age, each time imparting a different meaning, is not just a rock, it's Allah. He uses lots of different terms with different meanings. For example, he uses the word faith, closer to what we call knowing. You have faith in something, it's knowingness. It's not just belief. And when the word faith is used, you don't just think that of a belief of something. It's an interactive process where you come to know the truth. And when he talks about the word faith, ikhlas, he's talking more about what the effect of knowing is on something. What happens to you when you realize something you know about? Something that changes your life. It certainly changes how you see life. He refers to Islam, but he's also talking about tariqah when he talks about Islam. He's talking about the way, the path. He's not talking about a religion. He was a very religious man, but when he says Islam, he also means the way, the path. It's a dynamic Islam, a moving Islam. It's the Islam of your heart and your soul. It's not easy to understand at times the many layers of meaning in his writings. When he talks about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the voice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can interpret that in a very basic traditional way. But that is only the outer manifestation of what he's really talking about. He's also talking about impulse, the Nuri Muhammad. He's talking about the prosthetic capacity. He's talking about the Muhammadan miracle and the potential within each person to pay attention to that truth, that perfection. And when he talks about people being deaf and dumb and blind, he says, wherever you find men or women with a big lock, that is a sign of something precious and valuable. Just like the snake that guards the treasure. Do not regard what repels you, but look instead at the preciousness of the treasure. What are the signs of the hidden treasures in your own selves, in our own being? And another of the great writings of Rumi is Fihi Ma Fihi, which some people have translated of what is in it. I would say it is what it is. It is what it is, or it is that it is. Oh, there are so many meanings, just as the title of this writing. But it's not just what you think it is what it is. When you're reading the stories in Fihi Ma Fihi, the first thing one does is to take it literally. It's a story. But then you have to ask yourself, what is it really? Is it what I think it is, or is it something else? How you answer that question points back to you and your capacity to understand. Questioning your own understanding is a very good position to be in if one is a Sufi. Note how often we assume that we understand something. Most people don't ever think that one person's writing or speaking could be communicating on many levels to many people throughout the exact same story. But that's exactly what happens in the Quran, isn't it? It means something different to everyone. It means something different to you every time you pick it up. And if you enter the Quran with something in your heart and your mind, that's what will be revealed to you. But that's also what's happening in Mevlana's writing. What is the it? What's in it? The it is what you want it to be. The it is what it can be. And if it is what you want it to be, then you have to deal with your wants, not with the it. Don't get caught up in looking at the lock. It's what's behind the door. What the lock is protecting, that's important. It's telling you something. And Fihi Ma Fihi, Rumi provides the key to unlock the treasures of the Matnavi. It's very interesting that people have focused on Rumi's poetry, but they have not focused on his discourses as much. His discourses tell us what he wants us to see, what things are in reality. He wants us to be clear, calm, emotionally, mentally honest, and not to get carried away with the outer, with the form. Don't be attached to the beauty of something, but let the beauty create an attachment to the origin of that beauty. Don't be attached to the vase. It's only there to hold the flowers. And at the same time, what is the it? Can only be one thing. It can only be Allah, because there is only Allah. Who is Allah? Allah is who He is. There is only Allah. Fihi, ma fihi is another way of saying La ilaha illallah. All the stories on some level and all the poetry are saying this, that there is no more to reality than reality. Reality is, truth is, compassion is, mercy is, and it is what it is, nothing more, nothing less. It can only be the completeness of it, and the completeness of it is Allah. You can only project on the screen called life, giving form many different time frames, like the pictures on a wall, yet it is all Allah. Is Allah dying when the flowers die? Are they dying, or are they just being transformed? It is all Allah. There are many, many time frames, many cycles, many forces that affect what we're looking at. And who is the we that is looking? Who are we? Who am I? There is no Allah but Allah. If you can see that the many meanings in that one statement, one writer said it's like seeing all the fish in the ocean. We are all swimming in the ocean, and they come from the ocean, but without the ocean, they could not be. When you read these stories, you have to look deeply into them and find out not just what the metaphor is, but also what is pointed to in our own self. Again, that takes us to the subject of ta'wil. There's a story. The Emir, surprised by an unexpected visit from Rumi, said, "Master, how gracious of you to honor me in this way. I never expected this. It never entered my mind that I could be worthy of such an honor. By rights, I should be standing night and day in the ranks in the company of your servants and attendants. I'm not even worthy of that. How gracious is this?" And Mevlana says, "Well, it's all because of your lofty spiritual aspirations. The higher and the greater your rank, the more you become occupied with more important and exalted worldly affairs. The more you consider yourself to be falling short of your spiritual purposes. You are not satisfied with what you have achieved, thinking that you have too many obligations. Since none of these attainments can blind you from the divine attainment, my heart is moved to serve you. Yet for all that, I want to dictate your formal honor as well. Form, too, possesses great importance. No, much more than importance. It is of a true stance. Just as the body will fail if it lacks a heart, so too it fails without a skin. If you plant a seed with no husk, it won't grow. But if buried in the earth, with its shell, it germinates and becomes a great tree. So form is a great and necessary principle. Without it, our task fails, and our purpose is not attained. Yes, the principle is reality in the eyes of those who know reality and has become reality." Who of us have not been there? Who of us have not understood that question that rises in us the more we become involved with the worldly affairs? And our yearning for those of us who yearn becomes ever stronger. And we seek the form and the means to find that balance. Isn't that our story of a seeker? There's another story told by Rumi that illustrates the importance of the balance of inner and the outer. A dervish once entered the presence of the king. The king addressed him and said, "O ascetic, you are of the ascetics." The dervish said, "You are the ascetic." "How can I be an ascetic?" the king demanded, "since the whole world belongs to me." "Ah, you see, things the opposite of what they really are," replied the dervish. "This world and the next and all that there is to possess all belong to me. I have seen the whole world. It is you who have become satisfied with a mouthful and a rag. Wherever you turn, there is the face of Allah. This space runs and extends infinitely and forever. True spiritual lovers have sacrificed themselves for the sake of their fate, desiring nothing in return. The rest of the human race are like cattle. Even though they are cattle, they still deserve favor. However, they may live in a stable, yet they're accepted by the Lord of the stable. If he so desires, he transfers them from the stable to his private pen. In the beginning, Allah brought men and women into existence and then transfers them from the pen of spiritual existence into the world of the inanimate. And then from the world of the inanimate to the vegetable world, and then from the vegetable world to the animal, and from the animal to the human, and from the human to the angelic, and so on forever and ever and ever. He manifested all these forms so that you would know that his pens are many, and each one is loftier than the next. Allah revealed this present world to you that you can accept the other stages that are ahead. He did not reveal it that you can say this is all there is. The master of crafts demonstrate their abilities, and also that their apprentices will find faith in them and believe in the other arts that they have not yet been demonstrated. A king bestows robes of honor and lavishes kindness on subjects because they will be prone to receiving other gifts from him and hang hopefully upon a future of purses of gold. He does not grant these things for them to say, that's all there is. The king will not give out any other blessings, and so make do with that amount. If the king knows his subjects are going to say that and take such gifts for granted, he will never bestow blessings, whatever, upon them. The ascetic is one who sees the hereafter, while the worldly sees only the stable. The chosen ones of Allah who have true knowledge see neither the hereafter nor the stable. Their eyes are fixed on the first principle, the service of all things. The chosen ones know that they will grow because they see the end in the beginning. We say, Indiraja nil hayat fil bidayat. So it is with barley and rice in all things. Seeing the beginning, their eyes are not fixed on the end. They know the conclusion from the start. Such men and women are rare. That's just a story. Just a story of a king and an ascetic. But for those of you on the path, for those of you who are the teachings of the Naqshbandi Mujaddidi line, the Shazaliya line, you know, even if you only have a hint of the secrets contained in that story. And as I read this writing of Rumi's, did your mind watch that whole process as you heard it? What did you see? What did you hear? Did you hear about the physical evolution and the evolution of the seeker? What did you hear about the dimensions and the levels of awareness? What did you hear and know about taking things for granted, not wanting, about things being bestowed upon you? And then what did you hear about that divine presence? And if you listen closely, you will hear a description of what is in the Quran, a description of the reality that we call Sufism. Rumi goes on and he says, more and more. It is pain that guides us in this every enterprise until there is an ache within a passion and a yearning. A thing arises within us we will never attain. And without pain, it remains beyond our reach, whether it is success in this world or salvation in the next. Whether we aim at becoming a merchant or a king, a scientist or an astronomer, it is not until the pangs of birth manifested in Mary. Those pangs drove her to the tree, and the tree that was withered became fruitful. We are like the story of Mary in the Quran. Every one of us has an Isa within us, but until the pangs manifest, our Isa is not born. And if the pangs never come, then our child rejoins its origin, and in the same secret paths through which it came, leaving us empty without the birth of our own true self. Our inward soul is hungry, and our outward flesh is overfed. The devil has gorged the sickness. The king begs even for bread. The cure is found while Isa is here on earth. But once he returns to heaven, all hope will have fed. These words are for the sake of those who need words to understand. But for those who understand without words, what use do they have for speech? The heavens of the earth, or words to them. The heavens and the earth are words to them, sent forth from themselves from the words of Allah. Whoever hears a whisper, what need do they have for shouting and screaming? Story after story. I like that. Read the story of the Arabic king who was visited by a Turk. Read other stories. Here is the ta'wil. If we keep our view in purpose as our real purpose, if we keep in view our real purpose, if we understand what is truly our goal, then duality vanishes. All that confusion, all those decisions that you cannot make very easily, all the temptations and desires and fears and worries disappear. Duality is the branches, but the roots is all one. And so it is with the Sufi sheikhs. Although to outward appearance they have various styles and teachings and differ widely in their social standing, even in their actions and words, yet from the standpoint of their purpose, they all have one goal, namely the quest of truth, of Allah. Take the case of the wind. When it blows through the house, it touches the edges of the carpet and the rugs flap on the floor and move around. It carries straw into the air. Emerald surface of the pool looks like a coat of mail. It sets leaves and twigs dancing. All those conditions appear distinct and different, yet from the standpoint of the object, the root and reality are all one, the movement of the wind. Yet it all has all these different effects, all these different faces, and all these apparent problems and names and situations. As long as you find pain and regret, within yourself, that is proof that Allah loves you and is guiding you. And if you find fault in your brother and sister, the fault you are seeing in them is within yourself. The true Sufi is like a mirror in which you see your fellow believers. Allah says, get rid of those faults in yourself, because what bothers you in them bothers you in yourself. We all play different roles in life. We can see the effect of something you cannot. We can have control over things that others do not. Like a metaphor of the wind as it blows across the reality, it has many effects. The water, the leaves, the carpet, the person who's there, who's trying to meditate, the physical establishments in the outer. The whole comprehensive view that we have of life is the subject of the teaching for years upon years. Everything is aggregated into a comprehensive perspective, but you have to have the ears to hear it, you have to have the eyes to see it, and you have to have the will to understand it. We cannot understand anything without pursuing the inner meaning of it. And we cannot do that without having the form that we're talking about, the form that he had. And the form that is available to us is a form that was designed for finding the inner meaning. If you have flour, if you have water, and if you have yeast, make bread. How do you make the best of your life? How do you make the best of your life? How do you fulfill the capacities of your life? Each story is a new moment. Each moment in this world is continuous to the previous moment. Creation is happening, opening and closing, happening and being destroyed, created and destroyed, moment to moment to moment. It is a kind of metaphor and a storyline that you can remember, that carries you to the next moment. The memory of something that you loved. There is a rhythm to this moment, a rhythm to this dance. It is the rhythm of the Quran. It is the rhythm of dhikr. It is the rhythm of your breath. It is the rhythm of your heart. It is the rhythm of your hopes and of your love. It is the challenge. Our practices challenge our assumptions. Like his stories challenge our assumptions. Allow yourself to be challenged, to listen, to learn from this master. After all, it's just another reminder in time and in space. Allahumma lakal hamdu anta nuru samawati wal ard bifihinna wa lakal hamdu wa kami sarawati wal ardi wal min finnaha wa lakal hamdu la anta rabu samawati wal ardi wal man finnaha. O Allah, for you is all praise. You are the light of the heavens and the earth and all that is in them, and for you is the praise. You are the guardian of the heavens and the earth and all that is in them, for you is the praise. You are the Lord of the heavens and the earth and all that is in them. Antal haq wa wadukal haq wa qalukal haq wa qalukal haqun wal jannatu la haqun wa nahru haqun wa sa'atu haqun wa nabiyuna haqun wal muhammadun haq. O Allah, you are the truth. Your promise is true. Your speech is true. Your meeting is true. Paradise is true. Hellfire is true. The hour is true. The prophets are true, and Muhammad is true. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for your time and your patience. Remember to remember, inshallah. Sorry for any interruptions. Please forgive me, and may Allah forgive me for any errors that I made. Jazakallah khair.